Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. You are back joining us for another edition of Reasonable Doubt, brought to you by the Harris County Criminal Lawyers Association. I'm your host, Jimmy Ardwan. Back as always, my co-host Julio Vela. And Julio, the guy with the show before us, decided to stick around for the next hour.
I was hitchhiking home, and Mark said he couldn't leave till after the show.
I mean, you just didn't even leave the table.
Yeah, well, I did go. I went up.
You took a break?
Yeah, I took a pee break because I can't.
When I came in,
I can't do 2 solid hours. I'm an old man.
When I came in, they were physically moving you in the chair.
Yeah, I'm an old man. Yeah, well, that's you know.
So I figured you hadn't gotten up.
It's battle wounds. It's battle wounds.
For those who don't know who Ray Hill is, he's a local, living legend. The man has been on the airwaves and on the vibrations for years.
And literally for the hour before us.
And with the hour before us, the man was a defendant who took his case all the way to the Supreme Court and allowed all of us to say F the police, and then subsequently NWA was able to do that. The man is involved in local politics. He's involved in local speech. He's an actor, writer, advocate.
Don't forget the ex-convict part.
Ex-con, talk to us about
retired burglar.
Did you at least beat one of those, or did you time for that?
No. I got sentenced to 160 years in the Texas penitentiary.
You look good.
For commercial burglary. Yeah, I'm a lot older than I look.
For 160 years.
No, I got down there, and when you go to prison with a number like that, but you ain't worried about getting out because your discharge plan is what, a pine box or a body bag or a fistful of ashes? You know?
Right.
That's all you got. And so I went down there and I immersed myself into that culture and was absolutely fascinated by prison culture. Prison culture is a derivative of slave culture. Read Michelle Alexander's book, The New Jim Crow, you'll understand. And hobo culture. That's where prison culture comes from. It derives from that thing. So the language matches how hobos communicate and how slaves communicated in antebellum period.
What years were you there? How long did you stay, and how'd you get out?
I went to Texas prison in November of 1970. And I was assigned to the Ramsey unit down in Brazoria County.
Right, I've been there.
My job assignment was I was the maintenance bookkeeper. And I had 160 years, 20 consecutive 8-year sentences. And so as soon as I got there, they made me a outside trustee.
Right.
Well, why the hell would they do that? Because I knew head of classification was a fellow by the name of Red McCaskill. He was a former Houston constable, Big Red, his father. He was the son of Red McCaskill, the constable, and they made me, he was in charge of classification. You're Ramon Hill's son, ain't you? And I said, I am. And so he said, well, I'm going to put you out there as trustee, and if you run off, I'm going to come down here and kick you all up in your ass. You understand me that? And he used much rougher language than that. I said, yes, sir, I understand that. I appreciate your trust in me, but I was able to run all over the unit by myself most of the time.
And how long were you there for?
4 years, 4 months, and 17 days.
But you were sentenced to 160 years. How'd you get out?
I filed an 8th Amendment writ in the Southern District of Texas saying 160 years was cruel and unusual for nonviolent crimes against property. Now the writ, according to case law, didn't have a chance of a fart in outer space. It was just,
you do it pro se?
It just would move them. But I did it pro se. I had John Hughes was my criminal defense lawyer. He's the guy that got me that 160 years, and I kept him on to work the writ. And so he was there next to me, and he said, I can't use some words on broadcast, but we're wetting up the rope. We ain't getting nowhere with this. And I said, all right, John, just use your bar card and shut up. And I was paying him well enough to do that, because if you are a commercial burglar and you steal what queers actually know about, antiques, art, jewels, and electronics, you can make a lot of money if you don't fence that off at 10 cents on the dollar. And what I did is open up an antique store in Madison, Tennessee. My sheriff, from whom I rented the building space, was a fellow by the name of Buford Pussy. You may have heard of him. They made movies about him called Walking Tall. That was my sheriff in Madison County, Tennessee. And he knew everything, and my store was stolen, but it wasn't stolen in Madison County.
Sure.
So I paid high rent, but no questions were asked.
Right.
He thought it was strange that my new inventory trucks appeared in the middle of the night.
That's awesome.
And I did that professionally for a good many years, made a lot of money. And so when I got busted in an income tax investigation.
But so I'd imagine by
That's how they always get
by
you
the
with
feds,
income tax.
they got
income
it.
tax by the. I mean, would you still?
No,
Yeah.
the feds were investigating me for income tax. But Will Wilson, who was the the federal attorney in Houston, found out there wasn't any future in that. He didn't have a case because I had paid income tax. If the money was not in a brown paper sack in my closet, I paid taxes on it. Everything went through the bank, I paid taxes on. And it's not his business where it came from. His business was, did I pay taxes? And so Will Wilson backed off, and it was left to Carol Vance, the district attorney, to prosecute me for the burglaries. And I did 10 felony thefts and 10 burglaries.
What are you robbing museums or something?
No, warehouses.
Warehouses.
Antique stores, warehouses, the Sakowitz department store, jewel department.
That is awesome.
I did all these. I did time for all this, so I can talk about it.
Right, sure.
The statute of limitations.
They can't try me again.
It's over already.
Jeopardy is attached.
This is
Statute
phenomenal.
run.
They can't try me. So I wound up going at Judge Walton. John Hughes was my criminal defense lawyer, who's now dead. Judge Walton was my judge, who's now dead. And so we went in. I won 2 trials with John Hughes, and I lost the 3rd trial. And I don't know how I lost it, because we had tape of me being on television in Cleveland, Ohio, because I was also involved in the anti-war movement and and that kind of stuff. And I was in Cleveland, Ohio when the burglary took place, and there was the wall had the calendar and a clock behind me, and that was evidence. And I said, Mr. Hill couldn't have done this burglary. But at my level, I didn't do all the burglaries. I had a crew to do that. I just didn't identify them.
I mean, you're like the real life Thomas Crown effect.
That's what I'm thinking.
And so I lost the 3rd trial, and it was agreed that I would be sentenced to 8 years. And then we threw in all these other, and then at the end of it, it was shall be served consecutively. 160 years, but that's a wake-up call.
Right.
Here I am standing in front of the bench in my best suit with my Countess Mara tie. My shoes have just been shined for the occasion. I'm neat, and I am being sentenced to 160
And how old are you? What are you, 35, 28, 30?
30.
Wow.
30. I was born in 40, and I went to prison 70.
Wow. And so judge sentences, and you end up in Rasharon.
I end up in Rasharon, and I'm perfectly happy. I adapt well to prison society. Everybody loved. I was worried about going in because the headlines said $4.5 million burglary ring busted. Leader refuses to identify co-conspirators. Leader is the head of Houston's gay rights movement. I said, I think there's some problems here. I'm going to prison, and the headlines are screaming openly gay. But the $4 million trumped that. I mean, when I got there, I was the guy that had knowledge, but prison is full of people who haven't stolen $800 in their life and actually got away with it. And here's a $4.5 million burglary guy. they wanted to learn from me. And I was no snitching because it said refuse to identify co-conspirators.
Right.
So all of that positive just kind of overrode. I was openly gay. Everybody knew I was gay. I didn't try to hide I was gay. I talked about being gay. And that was kind of all right.
Around what years were these? I think you said it, but
70, I was in 70. Then about 73, I decided I really don't want to do this the rest of my life.
sure, for 160 or so.
And so I went to the law library and I found the Eighth Amendment, and I thought cruel and unusual, but it's got to be cruel. 160 years for nonviolent crimes against property, that sounds cruel. Unusual, nobody around me had a 160-year sentence. So I filed an Eighth Amendment writ, and I called John on the warden's telephone. And I said, John, I just filed a writ, find it, and I want your support. And so John showed up in a beat-up old dirty Cadillac and lost half the hubcaps. John was a pretty earthy guy. And he said, no, he said, no, we don't have a chance. And I said, well, let's just go through the motions and see what happens. And it was going to be heard in John Singleton's court. Mm. And John Singleton actually knew my father. My father was a labor goon, and John Singleton had been a labor lawyer before he became a federal judge.
Right.
So I had some things going for me there, right? But then I got there, and Judge Singleton wasn't there. They said his daughter was having a wedding, and this visiting judge from Palestine, Texas.
I was just this past weekend, man.
A hayseed was there. And, of course, you've been to both of you practice federal law. Yeah. There's bam, bam. Somebody's beating on a wall somewhere. Right. Bam, bam, bam. Oh, yeah, God save this honorable court in the United States. And a guy jumps out in a black dress, right? Isn't that the way it happens? This hayseed jumped out in a black dress, and he went up there and picked his nose and scratched his nuts. And he said, I'm down here. My wife's getting checked out for cancer out at MD Anderson, and so I'm down here. Judge Singleton couldn't be here, so his daughter's getting married. He can't hold this hearing, and I really don't want to hold this hearing. You got some great golf courses down here, and I want to play golf. And said, you know how bad the golf courses are in Palestine, Texas. We got gophers. You don't even know what hole you're shooting at. This guy's doing a comedy routine, and my life is laid out naked on this table.
He's doing Caddyshack.
He's doing Caddyshack.
Talking about gophers on the golf course.
No.
And he's doing Caddyshack, and John Hughes is, we ain't got a chance. And so I'm wired up.
I might have told you to pass the hearing. Yeah,
I'm wired up tighter than a $30 watch. And so then he just gets up. He said, it looks like the state and Mr. Hughes could work out an agreement here, and I wouldn't have to listen to this here. I can go play some golf. And he just got up and walked out. And so the lawyers looked at one another, and they went out in the hall. I was in custody, so I went back in the holdover tank. And bless their hearts, I stepped out, and John said, I got it all worked out. Now, I don't know what that means.
Right.
That could mean anything.
It could mean, you know what that phrase, I got it all worked out. Well,
trust me, I got it all worked out here.
Yeah.
You're taken care of.
Yeah, and so I'm getting a little uptighter. They changed one word in my sentence from 20 consecutive 8-year sentences to 20 concurrent 8-year sentences. That nice judge gave me back 152 years of my life.
Wow.
One afternoon in federal court in Houston. And so I went back to prison, but I didn't have much time left. And I got out. And when I got out, I came back to the city.
Well, don't worry, take it. Take it.
No, it's for Chris. It's Richard. He's driving a load from somewhere
here
in
to
Mexico.
Tennessee or something.
Yeah, right. And he's on the road, and when he's on the road, he actually gets bored and he calls me to entertain him. And I do good at that.
Maybe he's watching the live stream.
I'm good at entertaining. Yeah, well, he's on the internet, I guarantee you that much. But at any rate, I go back to the prison and I don't have much time left.
Right.
And so I discharge. I don't make parole. I walk out of Texas prison after 4 years, 4 months, and 17 days, a completely free man.
Free man.
No strings on me at all. And I am scared to death. The one thing I know for sure, absolutely sure, no question about it, I'm going to be nobody for the rest of my life.
Wrong.
Nobody. But it didn't work out that way. I avoided the temptation to go to Palestine, Texas, and kiss federal judges. I thought about it.
Right.
But that was not the comely thing to do.
Probably wouldn't have got very far past the marshals.
And so, but at any rate, by the way, his name was William Wayne Justice.
See,
I did not know who he was then. I would cover him as a journalist for years later.
so talk to us a little. So then you're out, and then you also have experience with Harvey Milk out in.
Well, I get out and I go back to the radio station that I had co-founded. Your local Pacifica radio station
Right. Sure.
was founded by Deborah Danberg, Larry Lee, Don Gardner, and me in 1968. We went on the air in 1970. And before I went to prison, we were bombed off the air
Well, we bombed off the air. What do you mean?
by the Ku Klux Klan. They bombed us off the air.
Like literally bombed.
Literally bombed.
Whoa, wait a
the
second.
transmitter. They didn't bomb the station and kill anybody. They bombed the transmitter.
Molotov cocktail style?
No,
Real bomb
no.
with some
I'm
real
talking.
bomb?
I'm talking about plastic explosives.
Where out on Sugar Land or
no. It's
Stafford?
where it is now. It's up on Clark Road, up north of town.
Ku Klux Klan put you out of
Put
business.
us out of business twice.
Wow.
And then suddenly, our chicken stuffed little radio station became the most famous radio station in the world. But by the time the second bombing, I was in prison.
Right.
So when I got out of prison, I went back to the radio station, and within a week, I had a show called Wildenstein, after Oscar Wilde and Gertrude Stein, for the gay community. So I started doing radio with the intent of building a community out of one that had not previously existed, and that would have been 1975 is when I started doing the show. And that community became a community on September the 14th, 1977, when Anita Bryant came to town. And all of a sudden, I had, which was to Houston like Stonewall was to New York. I suddenly had a community. And the words gay community until June the 14th, 1977, meant the part of town where the bars were.
Really?
And that night, it became a large group of people with common goals and aspirations. And I'm an organizer. That's what I do.
Sure.
I organize those burglaries. So
Well,
I can organize stuff.
You know how to run a system. Make sure everything's in place.
so I went to work taking those people and putting them together as a cohesive, contiguous community, and that worked. And now I live in a swarm of historians, archivists, biographers. I spent half the day today with my biographer.
So, talk to us. When did it happen? So you've also taken your own case all the way up to the Supreme Court, like I said initially.
Not my criminal case. That was a case where I was out on my front porch on, of all things, Valentine's Day. That's June the 14th, 1982. My companion is a political expatriate from Chile, Patricio Domingo Bravo. And Patrick and I are out on the front porch watching the herds of people go by on Valentine's Day. And two cops grab a young black man in the neighborhood and they drag him over in my yard. And they pull out their flashlights and start working him over. And I said, wait a minute, wait, this is my yard.
Right.
I got some say here. My yard is, I don't know if you know where the Dolce Vita pizza place is.
Sure.
I was living in that house.
Okay, I know where you're
All
at.
right, yeah,
I know where
I'm
you're
on
at.
that front porch of that house.
I know where you're at.
And there's gay people everywhere because it's Valentine's Day and you got your honey and you're going out to the bars and all that going on. And
Who is a big fan of Valentine's Day, by the way?
really?
Big fan.
Big
Have at least 2 kids
Yeah.
from it.
Oh my God! Congratulations.
And 2 more from the day after.
Yeah, I understand he's a busy man.
Yeah, I'm working on it, man.
But then you got to realize I was married to a Chilean, so
Oh, well,
who called me 3 times today. It's been
Did he?
It's been 25 years since we were an item.
is this Domingo?
Yeah,
Hey.
and he and his wife named their baby after me. Does that give you a hint?
Hill or Ray?
No, Ray.
Nice.
Spanish spelling,
Hey.
R-E-Y instead of R-A-Y.
Right, sure.
But everybody knows where Brandon gets his middle name. And so Patrick is with me. And so the cops started beating this guy. And I said, wait a minute, it's my yard. You better get your ass in the house, you SOB, or we'll take your ass to jail. And I said, that's a good idea, mother. But I finished the word.
Right.
And they forgot all about Charles and came for me.
Really?
And Patrick was calling them far worse than that, but he was doing it in Spanish. He can't do English under stress.
Right,
and they're going to take his husband off of his front porch and carry him to jail, and Patrick is not a happy camper.
Sure.
And so I give Patrick my crutches. I was recuperating from a motorcycle accident. And they threw me in the back of the car and they drove me to Beech Nut Substation.
They still take people to the Beach Nut substation.
It's not when you're from Montrose. You get on the
Fair.
street and you go to downtown.
Fair.
They carried me to the Beech Nut Substation, but the sergeant out there knew me, and his words were, "Oh my God, nobody told me it's celebrity night," and and so I spent a long weekend at the Beech Nut Substation.
And so then you talk to me.
We tried the case.
So you-
I represented myself. Now,
You just have a disdain for lawyers? I mean, you represent yourself on everything. You're the
well,
one that put us out of
if
business.
you're representing yourself, my lawyer is Mike Manus. My briefing attorney is Jerry Bernberg. Those were not in their day second-rate lawyers.
No.
Those were scrapper. Right, Mike was scrapper, and Jerry can write the brief of death, and so Jerry briefed it out, and Mike fought it on the feet. But I could get more into the record representing myself.
He said he said something that made a lot of sense, and whereas a judge can stand us down, and we
Yeah,
see
you're
it.
officers of the court.
As officers of the court.
If the judge says, I don't believe I want to go there, the best you can do is, Your Honor, I'd like to build a record around this, and that may be permitted or not. That's a request. That's not a slam dunk deal. That judge has got to listen to everything I've got to say because I'm not an officer of his court.
It's pro se. He
good
comes
point.
in with the power of the people.
Yeah, and I don't have, the judge, I've told more than one judge, I'm sorry, Your Honor. You can't shut me down like that. I'm representing myself, and I will never be an officer of this court.
So you come in.
Make us seem so worthless. now.
Well, so you
No,
come,
but you can be cut off, and I can't. They can turn. They can
Well-
turn your spigot,
True.
but they can't turn mine.
unless you're up some judge up.
And so Mike and I know this. This is not the first case. I've been arrested for interrupting a police officer 4 times before that, and was arrested twice afterwards during the pendency of the case.
When was the last? So I was gonna,
But there's something behind that.
Sure.
When you've been sentenced to 160 years in a Texas penitentiary, the thought you're going to spend a few hours in county jail just ain't no
Ain't
big
none.
deal.
Yeah, no, I understand.
I mean,
that.
it's not even to worry about.
No, I had a guy recently. We tried his case. He's like, "What's the most I can get?" Oh yeah, Pfft, no problem. Let's do it. I walked him out, but so it takes a certain amount of individual.
Well, no. Prison is just a different way to live.
So talk. I mean,
The only people afraid of prison are people that ain't been there.
yeah, okay. So I'm very afraid of prison.
Okay, I'm not afraid of prison.
I'm very afraid of
I got friends there. As a matter of fact, I'm a bigger hero in prison than I am out here
Oh, he's the man who
because
never
of
snitched.
32 years of prison show.
So okay, so what's up with the prison show? Talk to us about.
Well, after I got out of prison, I mean, I was going to do a show for the Great Unwashed about somebody calls in the middle of the night, you're at home, a bed, asleep, and somebody's been arrested in the family. We say, my God, somebody's been arrested in the family. What's the first thing you do? You say, well, we've got to get them out. So you go meet these nice people they call bail bondsmen. And they have a way of figuring out exactly how much asset you can get your hands on and what your property is, and you put everything up for hock and give them every asset you've got. And then you wake up the next morning, you need a lawyer.
Right.
Now, how do you tell the difference between a lawyer in a clown suit and a clown in a lawyer suit? You see, that's another mystery in your life.
It's gotten especially harder with the internet.
Yeah.
And
All these guys now can make themselves look like the greatest lawyer ever lived.
And so nobody knows that. So
No.
everybody going through that experience will make every damn fool mistake possible on very short order. They don't know that if you get arrested in the middle of the night, they're going to set your bond at the maximum rate. Anything that can happen can reduce that bond at the first hearing. There's a myriad of things. You got a job.
There's a lot of things.
Yeah,
right. Let me talk
you
to
may
guys
even
about
qualify
your
for pre-trial services,
Right.
and you walk out of there with all your money in your pocket. But people don't know that. I was going to do the show that taught those people. I never got that audience. The minute I went on the radio, maybe it's because of that no snitching, 160-year-old, $4 million guy. The audience I got was convicts and lawyers and cops and guards and people in the prison business. I got that audience. Well, you don't do radio for an audience you don't have.
Yeah.
You do radio and television for the audience you do have. And so I leaned into it, and it got even worse. I mean, I was on the air less than 2 months, and somebody calls in from the side of the road. They've had a wreck. They can't visit their son, and they want me to tell their son, and I'm listening to this voice and these rain sounds and this freeway sounds. I said, damn, that's good radio. So I just wired her up, put her on the air. And she said, will you tell my son on the window? And I said, no, I won't. You tell him.
He's listening.
He's listening. You got you on the radio.
So
And out of that grew, the next week when I came in, the phones were blink, 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 blink. It was all phone calls. I'd lost my show.
Speaking of the audience we do have in phone calls, if you want to call in, get in on the conversation, 713-807-1794 is the number. If you want to have any questions or comments for Ray Hill, myself, or Julio, we're not really doing too much of the talking. We're listening to this. But you can get in on the conversation. You can also hit us up on Twitter at HCCLA TV, HCCLA_TV. And I've got Twitter up here. You can send us your questions and comments. But so you were saying about the prison show. And
Well, I was out for about 5 years doing the gay show.
So wait, how many shows did you have?
Oh, I'm the guy that founded the radio station.
So you just, I mean, you were
I
like,
was on the
Pacifica.
radio.
you were like
Pacifica.
Weird Al Yankovic in UHF.
Well, I believed in the principle of having a non-commercial radio station.
You did everything. You did all the shows.
Yeah, sure. And I could engineer the station. First phone license, I could engineer it, I could manage it. And I became general manager because we couldn't keep a general manager. So we sent the lawyers, Aaron, Fox, Plotkin, and Kahn, were big FCC lawyers.
Mm-hmm.
We sent them a letter and said, there's been a change of manager at KPFT. Ray Hill's something about me. And they said, no, this can't happen. This can't happen. And I said, what do you mean it can't happen? They said, well, FCC rules require that people who are licensed managers of broadcast facilities have to be people of good moral character. What does that mean? Well, certainly no perverts and no convicts. That for sure. And we could go on. But you're openly gay, you're pervert at the time.
certainly no
You're a
Ray
convict.
Hills, basically.
And you're right. And I said, Notify the FCC that KPFT in Houston is not in compliance with the rule.
That's
Why would
amazing.
we do that? I said, because it's better to notify them that we're not in compliance than have them discover it, and they can make a big deal out of it, but we say we're not in compliance. And so we got a letter back and said the FCC will put it before the next commission meeting. Commission meets quarterly. So right there I got 3 months. So I keep on managing the radio station. We get a letter back from them and said, well, it has been referred to the legal department for study. And we'll get back with you at the next FCC board meeting. So that's 6 months. Well, the legal staff looked at it and they got a Black's dictionary down. And Black's dictionary does not have a concise definition of persons of good moral character. Therefore, they suggested that the commission abandon the rule. And I became the first queer ex-convict to manage a broadcast facility. And now I think they're all queer ex-convicts. At least they act like they are.
Yeah, sure. That's awesome. So right here.
So I have been challenging. It's my job to rub the cat hair the wrong direction.
Well, when did you start rubbing the cat hair the wrong direction?
My parents were labor goons. I came by that honestly.
From here in Houston, from Texas?
Yeah. Frankie tried to organize nurses for the Teamsters. That didn't work. But she was very proud of the failed effort. And Raymond did a little better organizing shipyard workers for the AFL-CIO. And I was an issue of that union. So I grew up on Saul Alinsky and activism.
Did you grow up here? The Houston. What part of the Houston area?
Well, I was born in the Heights.
Really?
And then Raymond got a job at the shipyard, so we moved out to North Shore. Well, Cloverleaf. And I grew up out there on the back of a Jenny as a country boy.
And you've been here ever since?
Yep.
You live anywhere else?
Oh, prison?
Well, in Rashir, right, on the Ramsey unit. I've actually.
So how do you compare the protesters and the?
Oh, I'm so proud of the kids. I'm so proud of the kids.
How do you compare them to, say, the groups back in the 60s and 70s?
I wish I could sit down and teach them the theory. I actually was paid to do a series of lectures at the University of Houston School of Social Work on how to take social workers and make them activists.
Well, but I mean, we're sitting here talking to you. I mean, you've represented yourself in court. You have a clear understanding of the law and what you can do.
You know what I did with the Supreme Court case?
Yeah, I know, and that's what.
While Jerry Bernberg, who represented me before the Supreme Court, was Charles Allen Wright.
Right.
So I was not underrepresented.
No, but I mean,
Charles Allen Wright at the time was Mr. Federal Procedure.
But when you go into a protest situation,
yeah.
When you go into something like what you did with the FCC, I mean, you have a clear understanding of the rules. You know how to operate to get your point across, but you're also doing it within the scope of the law.
Sure.
And you understand the law.
I understand the law. I would not violate a law that I did not have serious constitutional questions about.
Well, and the problem I see today with a lot of these people is they don't even understand the First Amendment. I mean, all these people getting upset about things.
Why do you think I was such a hero in prison?
Because you actually understood the law.
Because I understood what I was doing.
Yeah.
And actually, prison, some of the most fascinating, and this guy that keeps calling me, he spent half of his life in prison on the installment plan. He's a con man, and he's a good con man. He's the best con man I ever met.
The guy from Chile?
The guy calling me on the No. Patrick is as honest as the day long. Patrick would.
Different.
A whole different animal. Well, it's the culture he grew up in. His father was a unionist in Chile. So that's why when Pinochet took over, Patrick had to leave.
Oh, wow.
He was literally an expatriate from Pinochet's Chile.
Right.
They had supported Allende.
Oh, really?
I studied economics under Allende.
You have to get out of there.
Yeah.
You had to.
Yeah.
So it was interesting. So I was at a breakfast this morning dealing with somebody who basically studies kind of part of a jury consultant, and they study generations for purposes of obviously understanding who your jury is going to be.
Sure.
And one of the things that came up was obviously millennials.
Yeah.
And the new group of protesters and some of the beliefs they have. And the interesting thing is they put their own personal beliefs or personal ethics ahead of the law.
Yeah.
And
And that's what the kids at Parkland are doing.
why-
They have
why-
very strong personal beliefs that guns are killing their peers.
Right, but I mean,
And they don't
understand-
mind blocking traffic, interrupting shopping. Well, the whole civil disobedience movement grows out of the theory that, yes, I am going to purposely violate by this civil action a law, but for
you
a
did yours
greater
operating
good.
within the law.
Well,
You were
I
using the
knew
law
where
to help, but
I
you
knew where
helped-
the lines were.
But you used the law to help benefit what you were trying to
Yeah,
do.
of course.
These people, it seems like today, they don't really understand that.
Experience, a matter of experience. I see. That's why I wished I could take the kids from Parkland.
Mm-hmm.
First place, hug them all because they're kids, and then sit down and say, "Listen to Uncle Ray," and teach them the theories of Saul Alinsky. You know, Saul Alinsky was this amazing guy.
I don't know who that is. I don't know who that is.
Did you?
Better call
Did
Saul.
when you got here? When you got here today, do you remember turning on Roberts?
I do remember turning.
Do you know who that street was named after?
I don't.
Have you ever heard of Roberts' Rules of Order?
I have heard of Robert's Rules.
That is Roberts.
That's Mr. Rule of Order.
Mr. Rules of Order. But the street was not named after him for that reason. The street was named after him because he designed Houston Ship Channel. He was with the Army Corps of Engineers. He's a very significant Houstonian.
And he created Robert's Rules of
Yes, he went back to Connecticut, and his Presbyterian church was in turmoil over issues. And so he wrote Robert's Rules of Order as an orderly way to come to a decision.
Did
in a
you?
debate.
So, do you see?
And that's the law. I mean, it's not a law like the legislature passed it and we had, but if you're going to be in an organized room where you're collectively making decision, Robert's Rules of Order is the law.
Have you seen movements like you did in the past today? In other words, so you have these women marches down all over the country. You have marches that's the one that first comes to mind. Are there parallels to what you see then and now, and what are your thoughts on that?
To a large degree. Now, the way I put that whenever I'm speaking to college students is we don't think about queers like we used to. You're welcome. You're
right.
You're
I mean,
welcome.
that's not a thing.
I didn't do all of that by myself, but I was in the room where it was planned.
Okay, I have a question for you.
Sure.
Because you've said the word queer about 20 times since we've been on here.
Sure.
Okay. Now, some people,
I'm tidying it up.
I know, but some people in the gay community would view that
No,
as offensive.
not in the gay community. We're over it.
Okay. Okay.
No, and that is training of your troops.
And is it because queer was something that was co-opted to?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just take that slur off the table.
Right. Right.
Just take it off the table. I'm not here to debate words.
Right.
I'm here to debate issues.
Right. Right.
and that has been my principle for a long time. But my old show, Wildenstein, is now Queer Voices.
That's wild. No pun intended. That's wild.
But it's all right.
Or was it a-
Do you know who Oscar Wilde was?
No, I don't know who that is
Oscar
either.
Wilde was
How many people are you going to admit to not knowing?
I don't know.
Oscar Wilde was an
That's a
Irish
millennial, I suppose.
queer writer. He was the first person sentenced to prison for being gay.
In
London,
really?
in London in 1885.
Wow. And do you feel? I mean, the thing is that people are still fighting for gay rights and still fighting for.
Sure.
You know.
Well, I got to convince them we ain't there yet. Stay in line.
But for some,
Vote in order.
I'm 34 years old. You know, so I'm young.
34 years old.
And to
God
me,
damn, if I were twice your age, I'd go home and flush the Viagra down the toilet.
well, that's why I'm having 4 kids. I already. Yeah. No. I mean, that's what I'm saying.
See what I mean?
Yeah, I know. But what I'm thinking is, you know, if I were to ever be in a position to affect change in policy at a governmental level, or have the gift of organization, of organizing of people, those things like gay, Mexican, black, those things aren't, they're for, I would like to think for most of my generation or individuals who are like me, those are things that we have, that we should have conquered and moved on from.
No, you know where I learned some of the best activism is from Malcolm X.
Okay.
Malcolm X did not give a tinker's damn about what white people thought about black people. It just didn't bother him. His mind never went there. He only cared what black people thought about black people. And I'm reading that, and my good friend Charles Law, who was a professor out at TSU, Charles and I were bonded together in more ways than you can count. And Charles said, "You've been reading Malcolm X?" I said, "Yeah." And he said, "What do you think?" I said, "Pretty scary stuff." He said, "You're an actor." I said, "Yeah." He said, "Cast yourself as a black man and read exactly the same words." And the impression was, why the hell didn't somebody tell me about this before?
Sure. Sure.
All I had to do is change the performance piece of reading it as a black man.
And what did that do for you?
Oh, I always quote Martin Luther King because it's respectable. I memorized every speech that Malcolm ever gave.
Really?
Yes, yes.
Really?
Do you know who Malcolm X is, Julio?
I know who the Malcolm X is.
I just want to be sure.
I know who Malcolm X is. Okay,
Yeah,
look.
and Malcolm X, well, Cesar Chavez.
Sure. Hey,
Cesar Chavez in his day, Cesar Chavez. But Cesar was so humble. Malcolm was not famously humble. But Cesar was, I met Cesar Chavez twice when he was leading marches out of the valley. Raymond, my father, and I went down and joined one of the marches to Austin about health benefits and pay for people that worked in fruit harvesting. So
you marched then, you're still marching now?
Well, no, crippled men don't do a lot of marching. I mean, I got one leg. I kind of left it in Vietnam. And
You're a veteran too?
No, I was a journalist.
Really?
Yes, I was a journalist in Vietnam.
Did you like combat journal, like going out there?
Oh yeah, I was out. But let me tell you, I don't care if you got a gun or a pencil. When the incoming rounds fly over your head and kill people all around you, you're going to mess up your underwear.
You know, there was a...
It don't make any difference how you're armed. It's
Yeah.
the same fear of combat. I still occasionally have nightmares about it.
There's a movie, and I don't mean, and I mean this because you say this, but there's a movie just recently with Tom Hanks, directed by Steven Spielberg. It's about the Washington Post breaking.
Oh yeah.
And in the beginning, I think they have this news journalist out in Vietnam.
Yeah.
You know, right in the middle of everything, and you can't tell if he's a soldier or a reporter or what he's doing.
No. Certainly the enemy didn't care.
Wow.
And I was a writer for the Village Voice. Went to Vietnam.
I don't know who's the Village Voice. I don't.
Village Voice was a weekly, nationally distributed newspaper, kind of like the Rolling Stone, but it was.
You know, I think towards the end of the movie, when the Washington Post stands up and decides to publish their article, the papers, the Better Call Saul, who's playing a part, comes in and everybody's questioning if they made the right decision. He comes in and gives a bag to Tom Hanks, and Tom Hanks goes to Meryl Streep, and he just starts taking newspapers out of the bag, who followed the Washington Post, and I think one of them that he lays out is the Village Voice.
When I actually went to work with him, I was kind of ambivalent about the war, and by the time I went to Hanoi with French papers and came down the Ho Chi Minh Trail and changed sides at Da Nang Air Force Base. And the newspaper itself was ahead of me in being opposed to the war. But I became an anti-war. As a matter of fact, I came back and got involved in student organizations and became the chair of the Student Mobilization Committee in the war in Vietnam.
From what school did you go to? Where'd you go back from?
I organized against the war here at the University of Houston.
You say the man. You saying UH Cougs? UH?
Well, the Cougs has been a home base for a long time.
Uh-huh.
And so I don't have any degrees. I went to Stephen F. Austin for my undergraduate studies, but I didn't stick around long enough to pick up a diploma.
Hey, it took me 5 years to get out of UT. Okay, you can look that up.
I've got 3 honorary doctorates, but those are not real, so I don't use.
They are real.
No,
I don't even know if you're here real. I don't know if the Ray Hill that's sitting. It's an honor to listen and hear these things. And so you knew Harvey Milk too?
The ACLU has given me 2 Lifetime Achievement Awards in case one of them expired.
Well, I mean, I'm sitting here, and the man shouldn't even be here. Sentenced to 160 years in prison for, I mean, come on. The man shouldn't be.
It fascinated Vivian on her show too. She was.
It's fascinating.
Well, I mean, I think it's. I wish that more people would listen to you, because I think part of the problem with the groups today that are protesting is the reason a lot of what they're trying to accomplish is getting lost is because
they're not disciplined enough.
Right.
They don't
Nobody
have
takes them seriously.
they don't have the background to contextualize it. You can change the world.
Yeah.
The world is not difficult to change. If you don't believe me, just flash back to somebody you know that was alive in 1970 and say, what do you think about queers? And then come today and see what we think about queers. That is an enormous difference. It's a whole lot. That's why biographers and historians follow me around like puppies, is because that movement was successful. And suddenly, at this late stage of the game, how we did it is important.
Was Houston, when people think about activism, we generally don't think about Houston. Was Houston an activist?
Well,
like an
my biographer discovered me. Bless his heart, he discovered me because his last biography was about Harvey Milk. And he found correspondence between Harvey and I in Harvey's papers. And he said, well, who is this guy? So he came down here and got a job at the University of Houston in the history department. And with that job, he became tenured in like 3 semesters. It's almost impossible. But now his paycheck is stable, and he wants to write my biography. So we spent half the day working on that.
That's awesome. Born in the Heights, grew up Houston. So going back, was Houston an activist hub, or was it something?
For me, it was other people in the movement from New York, San Francisco, and Los Angeles thought of Houston as kind of a backwater, but it was the only territory that I had. Back in the 60s, Judge Elkins of Vincent Elkins and First City Bank purged the law firm and the bank of all of the queers he could find. And I confronted him about that. So you made a mistake. Your bank customers were depending upon those bankers for advice, and they were getting sound advice. And I said, your law clients were depending on those lawyers to do the work that they have the education to do and the experience to do. And that was a big deal. And then about 1994, Vincent Elkins hired Chris Bacon. Chris Bacon was openly gay, Harvard cum laude graduate. I think they called Harvard and said, you got any cum laude queers down there? We're looking for a new lawyer.
We need one of them.
Chris has a corner office, windows on 2 sides. He is their trial expert. He's the guy that takes cases to trial. He's been the president of Houston Gay and Lesbian Transgendered Political Caucus. Brought him up.
Wow.
And so Anise Parker, I met her as an undergraduate at Rice University, made her city council member, I gave her political advice, city council member, controller, and then mayor. She and I were together last weekend out at University of Houston, where Michael Sam was a speaker along with us.
So let's talk to us about this. So you have you have an involvement in the political process. You're part of a group. You aren't part of a group. I mean, you've mentioned this caucus organization.
Yeah, it's a political organization. It's the most disciplined political organization in this county.
And which one is it?
Houston Gay, Lesbian, Transgendered Political Caucus.
And when you
It
say
started out as the Gay Political Caucus, but we kept on adding names when it was appropriate.
just recently, I saw a little Facebook wave. It was something about lesbian women for marijuana or something.
Listen, we're all over the place.
I mean,
You teach people politics, and then you better get out of the way.
sure.
Because then the other issues that they're interested in, they are free to organize around that. The caucus, I don't think, has ever taken a formal vote on decriminalization, but I think if we had one, it would pass. And I'm a teetotaler. I've got a 59-year sobriety chip in my pocket. I haven't had any drugs or alcohol for 59 years.
That's amazing. And let me date you. How old are you? 40, so 78?
I started when I was 18. I
Wow.
stopped drinking in Havana, Cuba, in the middle of a revolution when I was 18 years old.
What were you doing in Cuba in the middle of a
I
revolution?
went to join the revolution.
No, you didn't. Are you serious?
Well, I had to upstage the
And I was going to ask you, how do you win an election? And then you got to start with being
This guy's going into
I
revolution.
had to upstage the prom that I couldn't take Jimmy Hull to as a date.
Hey, you know, that sometimes you got to go join a revolution, I suppose.
And I've got the articles from the North Shore Sentinel where here's the announcement, local boys in Cuban Revolution, Galena Park has a nice prom.
You know, I'm thinking to myself, I thought you couldn't fly to Cuba. You know, this is.
I've got the plane ticket.
No, I'm with you. This
I've
I'm
got the plane
dating
ticket.
myself.
You know what it cost me to fly from Key West to Havana, Cuba in January of 1950? No, I flew over in December 1950 on a round trip ticket, $24 round trip.
Well,
On the DC-3, you know one of those planes that said that?
Yeah.
didn't some plane crash recently from Cuba? Some passenger
I
plane?
don't know, I wasn't on it.
Well, right. Well, and you know what? No, I would not be surprised if you said you were on
You
it.
watching a movie?
And then I might have watched it.
No, you know, people think all of this stuff is fascinating.
So,
This is my life.
well, so as a political savant, what's your advice to? We've just gotten through a round of having all of the judicial candidates on.
Sure.
What would be your advice? How to win an election?
The new crop, we were able to sort the most. We have a very rigid screening process. The caucus.
Right.
We're tough. But if you get the caucus endorsement, that results in real votes, especially in the Democratic primary. And so we screen each candidate personally. Then that screening committee makes a recommendation that goes before the whole caucus. Now, the people that are on the screening committee are the kids. The chairs of the committee are people with experience, but the members of the committee are kids, younger members of the caucus. They may not be kids in age, but they are kids to us.
Sure.
And then after they sort them out, because they listen to the candidates and they make decisions, it comes to the floor of the caucus where old hands like me, who've known these people their whole careers, go in and maneuver. We frequently overturn the recommendation of the committee on the floor of the caucus.
Because you think because maybe they're.
Well, these people have lied to us before.
Sure, that's what I'm thinking.
And we've got knife
Right.
holes in the back of our jacket.
Right. And a knife hole that I might not have.
Yeah,
Right.
but that's why we kick in at the last round.
Sure.
But to get an endorsement, it takes 51% of the people in that room raising their hand. There's no other way to do that. And so it's a majority democratic process. It's open. There are 200 or 300 people at our endorsement meetings. And there's blood on all four walls when we leave. I mean, the debates are here.
Really?
Yeah, we do not take this lightly.
We should.
And there are gay people running public office that we don't even consider. We didn't consider Lupe.
Oh, right. Sure.
We screened her and she was not par, so we endorsed.
That's all.
Andrew. Yeah.
So
The tax liens don't help her. The tax liens that nobody knew about don't help her.
Yeah, well, that came out after.
I know,
the
that's what I'm
process.
saying. So
Yeah,
they don't,
But
they don't
we
help
didn't
her
know anything
now.
about the tax liens.
Yeah.
We knew that she didn't understand the office of governor.
Well, she clearly doesn't know how to
Yeah.
resolve her tax
manage
issue.
a house, manage your own house.
Yeah.
No, we endorsed Andrew, and we were disappointed that Andrew didn't make it. But you will notice that Andrew carried Harris County by 74%.
Which is around the percent that you bring in.
No, it's not it takes other people to do it, but 74% ain't close.
No. So okay, but in this, so do the Dems, okay, we're nonpartisan. We're not,
Yeah, I
we're
understand.
not Republican, we're not Democrat.
Actually, I engineered personally the endorsement of Mark Atkinson in his first race and of Jim Anderson. They were two Republicans running in a year where everybody else wanted to endorse it better. And I said, wait a minute, I know Mark Atkinson. He used to be a programmer over at KPFT. Remember, he had a show called Buffalo Bob and the Chip, and he was the Chip. Remember him? He's a nice guy. You know, give him a chance. And the caucus endorsed him. And I said, Jim Anderson, I've known Jim Anderson since he represented topless dancers. I met Jim Anderson in the basement of the jail house. He came in, and Jim tells the story too. He came in and said, I can't find my client. They're hunting. I said, I can find your client. She's booked under Phanu Lanu. She said, he's not even Vietnamese. I said, no. First name unknown, last name unknown. I said, what was her dance name on the shift at the club where she was arrested? Because they only have one woman out there with a name because they have to sort the tips out off the credit cards.
You got about 30 seconds left.
And he said, Bunny. And I said, your client is listed under Phanu, Bunny, Lanu. He found her, and we've been friends since.
Phanu Lanu, that's the names that permeate all DEA reports whenever you read them.
I'm just happy that till the dawn of time, when they search Ray Hill, there may be somewhere down the line that my name will come up. I'm happy about
No,
it.
they're going to put this on YouTube. We'll be together on television in less than a week.
In perpetuity.
I'm ready for that. It's an honor to have sat here.
Well, it's an honor to be invited to do the show.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you both. And let me say one thing. If we only got a couple of seconds. Houston trial lawyers in the criminal side are some of the hardest working, least rewarded people who carry a bar card. They try their best sacrificially to serve their clients. I don't care whether they're working for the public defender, whether they're out there in private practice, or how they got into the system. I deal with people every day who have been over-sentenced, wrongfully convicted, and the only line of defense are these guys sitting at this table with me and their peers in their meetings. If you want to be a lawyer, you ain't going to get rich in criminal law, but you're really contributing to the cause of the Constitution of the United States.
You will get rich in life experiences, ladies and gentlemen. Ray Hill, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me do that plug.
Absolutely. That's all the time. We are out of time this week, ladies and gentlemen. For Julio Vela, I'm Jimmy Arvlon. We'll see you next time. Good night.